Hey everybody, my name is Jacob Reed and I directed the music video for Something to Believe by Philip Labus. That's me on the right. If you haven't seen it yet, go check out his YouTube, his Instagram, TikTok. It's been getting a great response and a lot of people have been asking how we did it. So I'm going to show you how I came up with the concept for this music video, how the idea evolved in the crucible of a tiny budget, and how we pulled it off. So here we go. So it started with me listening to Philip's beautiful song. The images you're seeing right now are from my original pitch to Philip, summarizing what I wanted the video to feel like. The first time I heard it, I played it over and over again, and a lot of the visuals that ended up in the video just kind of played on a loop in my head. It felt like it was expressing a feeling that I've had better than I could ever articulate it. The song is about being detached from reality as a coping mechanism, floating through existence instead of participating in it, and really yearning for something to keep you present and to give you hope and to give you a reason to believe. The chorus is a reference to climate activists who lit themselves on fire. I wanted to start with him playing the piano and kind of floating through visuals somehow that gave the feeling of what it's like to doom scroll, and then of course end by lighting the piano on fire. It felt like the chorus reference to self-immolation was a Chekhov's gun that had to be paid off by the end of the video. Also, setting pianos on fire is a visual meme that artists and soldiers have used since World War II. As far as showing the detachment, when it comes to visualizing a detachment like this, there's kind of two classic ways that I've seen this done. First, the Snorri cam, which is named after two Icelandic filmmakers named the Snorri Bros. They developed this rig for a punk band music video, and then a friend of theirs asked if they could borrow it and show it to some guy named Darren Aronofsky. Sometimes called a chest cam, body mount, or body cam, this is a device rigged onto the body of the actor with the camera facing them so they appear in a fixed position in the frame. The resulting shot is dynamic and disorienting, but it also has this kind of frenetic feel that doesn't really match the song. So that brings us to the other technique, the double dolly, popularized by one of my favorite directors, Spike Lee. A double dolly is like a traditional dolly shot, except that instead of just the camera being on a dolly, the actor is either on the same dolly platform or a separate dolly that moves in tandem. The resulting visual is of a motionless central character with the background gliding past them. I decided this was a much better fit for our video. So based on this inspiration, my original plan was to rig a piano onto a double dolly and wheel it through a warehouse while dozens of projectors shined different images that were referenced in the song onto the walls. I would have to find a hallway that was narrow enough that we could see both sides of the hallway in the frame behind Philip as we moved forward, but also it was wide enough that a piano could fit through it at a 90-degree angle. I wasn't able to find any locations that already had the perfect hallway for us, so I started looking into renting a warehouse and building a hallway, but we couldn't really afford any of the warehouse locations. Oh, and also renting a couple dozen projectors was really expensive. Even renting a dozen, even 6, we couldn't afford. So I was talking this over with my friend Eric Bader, who's a wonderful cinematographer, and he suggested finding or building a circular hallway so we could reuse the same handful of projectors. This is a great idea, especially if we had a budget slightly above what we had, but I couldn't really find anywhere that I could afford. So then I thought maybe we could just do a classic rear projection. So if you don't know, rear projection is a technique that has been used in filmmaking since the very early days, where a plate is filmed of a background and then it is projected behind the actors. So a place that you are probably most used to seeing this is car chases in old movies, and even on TV shows they still do this. This technique predates green screen, but it also is more effective than green screen because you get a lot of the same light and reflection on the car or whatever else, is in front of the rear projection without having to do all of that in post. Rear projection is also used on one of my favorite music videos of all time for the Rob Cantor song, Old Bike. I'll put that in the comments somewhere. It's a fantastic video. And they also posted this behind the scenes of how they made it, which has always kind of been ingrained in my brain. So I was talking about this video and about using rear projection with a friend and fellow filmmaker, Michael Langen, who also comes from an art background and does just incredible stuff. And he asked me if I had seen the behind the scenes videos that the VFX team for Everything Everywhere All at Once did, and I hadn't, so he showed them to me.
3 panels this way, 3 panels this way, and they're vaguely LEDs, like they're really big pixels, but enough that we could then send the video footage through these LED screens. They're very, very minimal. And Michelle could sit in the middle and pretend to be flying through it.
I realized we could use the same technique, but with rear projection instead of green screen, and I started looking up walking tour videos for inspiration and made a plan to rig my GoPro to my kid's stroller and wheel it through some areas in Los Angeles. We'd have to add the projections digitally because we wouldn't be able to hook up a bunch of projectors in a public space, but also we couldn't afford a bunch of projectors because... And then that got me thinking, to digitally fake projections onto a streetscape was going to be really complicated because of varying light sources, textures, 3-dimensional surfaces. What I really needed was an area that was flat, long, and had consistent lighting, kind of like a big paper towel roll, but with lights. Enter the 2nd Street Tunnel. Even if you don't know it by name, you're probably familiar with the 2nd Street Tunnel. It's been used in a ton of movies, including Blade Runner, Flashdance, Terminator,
Faster! Drive faster!
Con Air, Gattaca.
Thanks.
You're welcome, Ethan Hawke. Independence Day. It's also used in a ton of car commercials and in music videos.
You have 5 minutes. Get down your radio.
Okay.
Hurry up.
It's my life and it's now or never. I just want you to know who I am. I just
I went to film school near the tunnel, and it was one of the first film locations I saw in person. So I always wanted to film there. I like that it's instantly recognizable, but at the same time, you can't immediately place it. I bought a little car mount, and I tested it out.
Hi, I'm Daniel Tiger. This is my special video. Whoa!
First when I was putting my kid to bed, and then after he fell asleep, I went downtown and I shot some test footage of the tunnel. I drove through multiple times trying to figure out what the ideal frame rate was and where I had to position both my car and the car mount in order to get a more or less symmetrical shot. I was trying different frame rates out for 2 reasons. First, I wasn't going to be able to drive at a consistent speed through the tunnel that was as slow as how we would pull a piano. So I knew I was going to have to slow down the footage. And secondly, like I said, the tunnel is long, but it's not long enough for a 3-minute song. So going at a slower frame rate would extend the tunnel. Once I had the test footage, I made a mock-up of the video to show Philip and the rest of our production team.
check my phone.
I love to do as much previs as possible, and this is kind of the moment everything really came together. As you can see, it's pretty similar to how the final video turned out.
I'm a freak if I don't show. So I go.
So now it was time to film the tunnel for real. Me, my producer Matt Bazzani, and director of photography Carissa Dorson drove downtown late at night when there would be less traffic in the tunnel.
Okay, we've got Carissa and a camera mount here in the back. Then we've got that cable goes through the moonroof so we can watch what's going on the monitor.
Once we were set up, it was pretty much just keep driving on a loop, on a loop, on a loop until we got the right shot. Every time we would get a little closer to the right timing and the centering of the camera, but also we were dealing with a lot of things out of our control. There would be other cars that would drive by and that would bone our shot. Then we would have to basically do it again. Since we were going in a loop, there was maybe 5 minutes in between each take, and one of the times we came around to go into the tunnel and there was already someone set up stealing a different shot for their project.
Well,
I'm just interested. I don't want to ruin their shots.
yeah.
Once we had a shot we liked, the next step was going to be adding the projections with VFX. More on that in just a second. Meanwhile, my producer Matt and I started looking for a location to shoot the rear projection where we could safely light a piano on fire without starting the next California wildfire, because
anyone who handles fire in any form is a potential killer.
typically you shoot a rear projection in a controlled environment like a studio. That's kind of the whole point. But I wanted to end this video in a feeling of catharsis, like you had bottled up all this anxiety and emotion and then finally had a chance to breathe. To make that moment really hit, I wanted to pull out and reveal somewhere strikingly beautiful. I ruled out the beach, too expensive to permit, and the forest, too many things that can catch on fire, but the middle of nowhere felt like a cool vibe. Especially if we timed out our shot right as the sun set, we could get the pinks and oranges of a desert sunset that would contrast with the tunnel's greens and grays and make a really compelling shot. Unfortunately, when you want something to look like it's the middle of nowhere, you mostly have to shoot in the middle of nowhere. Looking at pictures of locations online, the best spot was a dry lake bed in Newberry Springs, but that was halfway to Vegas, about 2.5 hours outside of LA. So we checked out a few places that were closer to Los Angeles. Outside tables stay here. There's water and electric. Okay, this is the helipad, which is really cool, but probably too much brush.
Is a potential killer.
Pretty wide, and then this is maybe, this way is like 30 for dolly track. But eventually, producer Matt Mazzani and I spent a full day driving out to the dry lake bed. We didn't learn until after our shoot that this was the same location where the pivotal third act chase scene from Don't Worry Darling occurred.
Everyone is acting like I'm crazy.
I think there's
And it looked great.
nothing that could burn within a couple 100 feet of wherever we would set up. No wind. The sun set over by where the mountains kind of meet, over where I'm pointing.
I also liked the symbolism of ending a video loosely about climate change on a visual reminder of how extreme the climate has become.
Yeah, we'll check out a couple other places around here, but I think this is the spot.
It was perfect.
Lowering video now.
I checked with everyone on our team to make sure they were all down to drive that far, and we locked in our location. We still had to figure out permits, insurance, and how to do the fire gag safely. Meanwhile, here's what was happening with the tunnel. First, we had to make a 3D model of the space and create digital projectors that would throw images onto the wall. But what images specifically? Philip and I talked over the lyrics and roughed in the type of visuals we were both imagining. That list would eventually be refined into a beat-by-beat image list with timecode. Each image also needed to be cleared, which either meant figuring out the original artist and contacting them, claiming fair use for news footage, or creating the images myself, either in Illustrator, Photoshop, or using a tool like OpenAI. Factoring in the time for finding people's contact information, giving them time to respond, and asking them if we could use their memes, etc., this took a couple of months. Once I had all of the images locked in, I sent them to a VFX artist who began placing them into the tunnel. We went through several rounds of me giving notes through Zoom's annotation feature, showing where to place each image and to dial in the timing so that each image could be seen as the tunnel moved. It was kind of like playing Tetris on a moving wall. And the night before the shoot, we were still making tweaks. Also, you'll notice that I am testing the projector the night before the shoot. That's because it took a little while longer than Amazon said it would to arrive, and it showed up 10 o'clock the night before our shoot. Speaking of which, here's a story that's funny now but was extremely stressful during pre-production. Our San Bernardino County film permit was given with the condition we'd get sign-off from the fire department, but nobody could tell us which fire department. SB County said it wasn't them, so we called the state said it wasn't them. After weeks of calling, getting answers, figuring out who to call next, we found out the dry lake bed, which we had already paid to rent, was under the jurisdiction of the Newberry Springs Volunteer Fire Department. They only answer their phone on Wednesdays and Thursdays, and we found this out the Friday before our shoot. I used my detective skills to track down the chief of the fire department's cell phone on the internet and finally obtained the permit just in time for the shoot. We didn't need an FSO or water truck as our location was on a dry lake bed, the fire department was small, and we had a licensed pyrotechnic expert on set. The next morning, it was time for our shoot. Matt, who is both our producer and our AD, built a schedule leading up to sunset where we could get our pivotal shot. I mean, really our only shot. Even with 5 hours of total driving time, we tried to make it a 10-hour day. Our crew was me, Carissa, Matt, and Philip, plus gaffer Renee Yescas. Matt and I thought an extra pair of hands would really help, and it just so happened our friend Clay Larson was available and down to clown. Clay happens to be a professional photographer and also has directed music videos, so having him on set was a huge help. We met up at my house, got everyone COVID tested, and packed up the piano. We also tempted fate by putting a baby under a bunch of sandbags. Then we carpooled to save on gas money. Clay and Matt in the grip truck and the rest of us in my Subaru. We drove the 2.5 hours out to the location, getting to know each other really well, stopping for Jersey Mike's, and then to pick up our fire permit at the Newberry Springs Volunteer Fire Department. Just kidding, that's a stock photo. The real volunteer fire department operates out of this rec center. The ranch we shot on was about 15 minutes from the main road down a dirt road. Once you got onto the property, the dry lake bed is another 15 minutes of off-roading to get to where we set up base camp. By the way, for a place in the middle of nowhere, there were a ton of tire tracks we had to shoot around, leaving us to wonder, who left so many tire tracks? The cool thing about having a piano and a musician on set is whenever they're not being a pair of helping hands, they play piano. As you can hear, it was pretty windy during our setup, but we had double-checked and the wind was supposed to die down by sunset, which was good because our fire permit dictated we'd have to scrap the fire gag if the wind was over 10 miles an hour. We set up as quickly as possible so we had ample time to rehearse. After all, we were only going to get one take to nail the video. Here's a quick look at our setup. For all this talk about rear projection, director of photography Carissa Dorson figured out we'd be better off with front projection due to the angle of the sun and that we needed something more heavy duty than typical rear projection screen to fight wind. We ended up using an ultra bounce folded around a 12x8 frame and a short throw front projector we hid on the ground behind the piano. And those low budget LED panels that the Daniels were talking about.
You know how on those Star Wars shows, they have this massive LED screen that is like basically a good background? We had like the 99-cent store version of that.
Well, those were still out of our budget, but the light source we were matching was much simpler than theirs. So we made do with 3 LED light sticks programmed by our gaffer Renee to mimic the light in the tunnel. Once we were set up, we tried a couple rehearsals for camera.
You playback?
Our first on-camera rehearsal was for placement, movement, and framing.
Go to 2.
We couldn't test the lighting because it was too bright outside. So we broke for lunch. And we waited for the sun to set so we could do rehearsals with lighting. Quick side note, we were all curious about this weird-looking house overlooking the location. Turns out it's called the Volcano House.
It's called the Volcano House because it's built on top of a dormant volcano. You get off of the main road and then it's kind of a half-paved road and then you get just to a dirt road. Once you feel like you're about lost, you're almost there.
And while we didn't know yet that it was used for Don't Worry Darling, we did find out it was once owned by Huell Hauser.
This is gonna be an adventure.
And by the time I just showed you those clips, it had gotten darker and we were ready for our lighting rehearsals. Philip got in the zone while we made some final adjustments. Then we did our last pass of rehearsals. My goal with the video was for it to be an overwhelming experience with no relief from the stimulus until we pull out of the tunnel and immediately you have this sense of relief. Having a cut would give that tension a breaking point, so that meant that the video had to be done in one shot. Unfortunately, that also meant we had just one take when the lighting was exactly right. We also didn't have a backup piano to burn, so that had to be perfect too. All this to say we did a lot of rehearsing. Our day was maybe 3 to 4 hours of setup and rehearsals, and only about 20 minutes of actual shooting. After our final adjustments, it was time to paint the piano with an accelerant. That's Scott Harrison, our pyrotechnic expert, painting the piano. He's one of the top pyro guys in the state. Working with Scott was like hiring a painter. I told him exactly where I wanted the fire to start, spread, and sustain, and he made it happen exactly that way. Here's our final take. And here's how the final pullout compares to our previs and rehearsals. In a second, you'll hear me confirm with Matt and Carissa that our dolly and camera are locked in their final position.
Okay, Philip, freeze. Keep looking in camera. All right.
Then we'll all spring into action to prep for the fire gag before the light changes too much.
Do you stay far right, Renee?
Not yet.
All right, here we go, guys. Settle in. All right, Jacob, you all good?
I'm good.
All right,
Chris,
lights
you
on
good?
in your count.
Here we go. 3, 2, 1.
Gorgeous. Wow.
Oh my god, it's beautiful.
Take it back about the back not looking cool.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and put it out.
That's probably not okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Put it out. All right, guys, put it out. Do you want to cut camera? Do we feel good?
Let's cut camera and just
Cut
find
camera.
a different spot. Amazing.
So we're gonna repo.
We moved the camera to get a shot of the keys burning. This time we were going to let the piano fully burn. And in continuing with a long tradition of piano burning, I gave it a eulogy.
I just want you guys to know that this is the piano that was owned by a guy in his 80s. His family played it for at least 20 years that I'm aware of. It was last tuned in the 50s, if you can believe it or not. According to the legend that piano tuners write their initials and erase the previous tuner's initials, the last initial in there is like 51, I think. A couple weeks ago in 1951, so almost on the anniversary. That's just a little bit about this piano before we burn it. And my kids have loved playing it the last 3 weeks while it's been in my backyard. So thank you, piano.
So Scott, you're just gonna hit it and run.
Yep.
All right, Scott, how you're feeling good? But let me just check. Chris, let me know when you're good. All right, here we go, guys.
Everybody
Scott,
stand back.
call it out as you light it for me, please.
I'm going in now.
Go ahead.
With it burning like that, how close could someone get to it safely?
Close.
Philip, I have an idea if you're down,
Yeah, let's do it.
which is that, and Scott, I want to run this by you before we do anything, but after it burns for a minute or so, I want you to just go put your shoes where you were standing,
Yeah.
and we'll just film it with your shoes in there.
Yeah. Go ahead. I'll do it now. Well, I still got a good burn on it. Hot palm.
Yep. All right, great. And then get yourself safely out of there. Carissa, is there anything you could do to zoom in and get maybe some of that insides? As long as it's burning. And Scott, let us know if there's a moment where you're like, I think we really should put it out.
I'm on, this is the closest I can get from here, but do you want me to...
If you feel comfortable getting a little closer with sticks.
I also have another lens, but...
And Scott, just make sure Chris is safe distance to your eye.
Yeah, she's safe.
Thank you.
She'll be safe. It's self-regulating now.
Yeah.
So we might start hearing loud pops in a little bit if we start losing wire.
I think probably this is just for us and our enjoyment at this point after we get this shot, which doesn't mean it's not valuable.
Right.
But I think as far as what we got shot-wise, we could be safe to put it out. All right, so let's go ahead and put it out. Thank you, everybody.
The experience of being in the middle of nowhere together, watching the sunset, the piano burn, and then the night sky was really memorable. One thing you can't see in this footage is that when it got dark, the stars were incredible. After we packed up, we all turned off our lights and phones and laid on our backs in the dry lake bed, looking up at the Milky Way, just hanging out and talking for like 10 minutes. Then we had to go dump the piano. We had arranged with the location to leave it in the area they use for post-apocalyptic photo shoots. So if there's any fashion photographs or any other music videos from now on, our piano will be a part of that shoot. Now it's time to put the video together in post. Originally, I was going to show the screen and the lights being moved out of the way, but it looked better to just get straight to the piano lighting on fire. And I felt like seeing people move to the screen reminded you that you were watching a production and let some of the tension release before the fire happened. We also weren't able to get the projector quite as bright as we wanted, so we sweetened that a little bit in post. Our color and post VFX work was done by me and Lur Beitelshees, who was unfathomably helpful at putting the finishing touches on the video. There are a ton of little details you hopefully will never notice, but I want to highlight two. First, how did we composite Philip into the burning piano? So for this, we had 3 different ingredients. As soon as we were done with the pullout, we kept rolling on Philip with a light source inside the piano that mimicked the look of fire on his face. Then we cleared all of that out and got footage of Philip just standing still at the piano. From that, we pulled a still image of Philip that we masked the lighting effect over. Then we composited that into the piano being lit on fire. Also, the night sky we experienced in person could never come through on camera, so we added it digitally. For accuracy, I used an astronomy program called Starry Night Pro to export the exact night sky from our time, date, and location that we had experienced in person. And when Lur was color timing our footage, he added in the stars. So there you have it. If you stuck with me this far, thank you so much for watching this video. I love watching behind the scenes breakdowns like this, but making them takes a really long time. If you enjoyed this or have any additional questions, please comment below. And remember, the real something to believe is the friends we made along the way.